Hello and welcome to the Long Waits podcast. I'm Devin Windelsbeck,
And I'm Mike Windelsbeck.
and we are a part of a hiking trio out to hike the great long trails of Europe and the world. We're talking today about the Cotswold Way. So this is another one of Mike's solo hikes that he's been taking around the UK. So he's lucky enough that he gets to do two hikes a year. I unfortunately can only do one. So this is was this your second or third solo hike?
This was my third solo hike in the UK. Yeah, one a year
Yeah.
now I've done. Yeah. Yep.
We have you can look at our past recordings. We have one on Hadrian's, and then what was the second? St. Cuthbert's Way.
St. Cuthbert's, yeah.
Yeah.
Last year,
So
yeah, about the same time.
so this is that's third in the UK, which make it your fifth in the UK, fifth hike in the UK total.
One, two, three, four. My fifth UK hike. Yes, I'm
Yes,
actually becoming pretty good at getting around the UK.
exactly.
Except for I was pretty close to Wales, so I'm still not sure. Sometimes I know what people were saying.
Wales is still on our list.
It is. Everybody told me it's supposed to be beautiful, so I can't wait.
So yeah, we're here today to talk about the Cotswold Way. Cotswold Way is one of the, I would say, maybe one of the more famous treks throughout the United Kingdom, even though this is a country that has, a lot of different trekking and a lot of different hikes throughout it. But this is also like, when I was looking at photos of this is one of the like quintessential British countryside, very Tolkien, very Shire. It looks absolutely beautiful. I'm really jealous that I wasn't on this one. What time of year did you hike this, Dad?
This again was in April, a little bit later than normally I've done these in early or mid-April. This was just a little bit later, so it was right before May, like probably the last week and a half of April, which appeared to make a big difference in some of the weather issues, just the weather of the area.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I kind of just want to hear, I mean, on my end, I've heard a little bit about it off podcast, but I want to hear a little bit more about the trail itself. So just tell me a little bit about the trail. What is
Yeah.
the trail? Where is it? What is it like to hike it? And we'll start from there.
This trail was really interesting, and it kept coming up on some of my searches and discussions with people about a great solo hike. And it's located a couple hours train ride to the west of London, okay, kind of a little bit north of Bristol and Bath, up in that area. Matter of fact, the trail actually finishes in Bath, right? It comes down through Stroud and into Bath. Pretty easy to get to, which I really like. I did not do the entire hike because of time constraints. I had a week, so I actually asked Max Adventures, who we used, to build a different one. So I started at Painswick. I did not start at Chipping Camden. And matter of fact, I'd love to go back and do the top half of this, which is supposed to be really beautiful. It in general, I would say it's a moderate trail, but I use that almost laughing because there's been times when we've been on, people call things moderate trails and you're looking straight up, and there's a helicopter replenishing things, and other times it's moderate and it's a walk on the beach. So I don't know what these terms even mean, officially, but it was a pretty easy trail to follow. It's unbelievably well marked. Large sections of it are actually maintained by basically an organization, a nonprofit type of organization that takes care of the path. So really, most times you are walking on really well maintained, and also the signage was really good, except for not paying attention, which I did several times, and realized it was nowhere near where I should have been. But the path itself was really pretty easy. Couple quick things about the hike. People often ask me, was it hard? Some of the climbs out in the morning, okay, like you climb back onto these ridges, were usually pretty steep, but really well maintained. Weren't rock scrambles, which were nice. And the ascents were fairly short. So you were pretty much done with the ascent in a mile.
Yeah.
Maybe three-quarters of a mile. So you come up out of the town. You know how it is. The towns are in the valleys, and you come up and you hike along the ridge, and you drop back into the town later. So I don't think it was very hard. It was well recognized as a great solo trail, and which it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what about the scenery? So like you've now like hiked over a lot of different parts of the British Isles. You've been up in Scotland twice. You've kind of been closer to the Scottish-English border.
Yeah.
So what was different about this trail? I mean, I know the background behind you is from the trail itself.
Yep.
So what was it like just scenery wise hiking this trail? What were the towns like? What was the scenery like?
It was absolutely beautiful, and for a lot of reasons. Once again, I was a little bit further on in the spring, so that means that the trees had leaves on them this year. When I hiked Hadrian's, right, it was still a little early for trees to have their leaves in April, and I hiked Cuthbert's. It was kind of half and half. The smaller trees were in, but it was really beautiful because the trees were in, and there's a lot of flowers. For example, almost I have these beautiful pictures of you walk in this forest. It was like something out of a Tolkien novel, and there's nothing
Hmm.
but bluebells in this,
Yeah.
with the sunlight coming through, and it seems like this. Um, so it was really, the scenery was amazing. You did it. There were a couple different aspects to the hikes. When you were up and you got up along the ridges and you were heading in the beginning you were heading along a series of beacons, which
Hmm.
was funny you mentioned, this whole thing of, the Tolkien, like it almost felt like, it's like the beacons of Minas Tirith,
Yeah.
and I started at Painswick beacon. I actually had a 0 day to start. I actually hiked north to pick up 5 miles of the trail and then came back down, and then the Hurstfield beacon, and there's a couple others, and you kind of hike between these beacons where they used to basically set fires to bring people into this area. Very rolling. Um, Not a lot of up and down though, but a very nice rolling hills.
Yeah.
Easy ups and downs. Beautiful forest. It's part of a natural area along the west coast, and I'll grab the name of that and put it onto our webpage. So there's a lot. It's a heavily forested area too.
Hmm.
What I really enjoyed, though, I'll be honest with you, was first of all, some of the small towns I were in were absolutely just, for lack of a better word, precious little towns. They
Yeah.
were just really, it just felt like you were just strolling into the 1600s,
Yeah.
and the farms. It was the farms which were amazing. You're walking past farms which have been there for 300-400 years,
Hmm.
easy, and just the picturesque water moving past them. And of course, it is England and the UK, so everybody has these gorgeous gardens, and they're all planting
Hmm.
those in there. So just so many times I would just actually just sit on a wall and take a break and just stare at people's farms, and it was really nice. It was definitely a farm area. That area has there's a lot of conflict right now because people are coming in and setting a lot of hobby farms, and they're and so the prices are going up, and so therefore the traditional farms are leaving. But one of the things I really enjoyed too was a couple of times I came across signs talking about how this area was heavily farmed by the Romans,
Yeah.
which places them back once again, this connection back to Hadrian's, right? Because
Hmm.
you had to feed people up at Hadrian's, and you're wondering how did you do that? Because that area is very barren,
Yeah.
most of it. And it's because they were farming way back here. So they had, like, this was a Roman farmhouse, or where we believe there's a Roman farmhouse. There's obviously nothing left of those. The towns were simply amazing. I stayed in anything from very, very small places, where it's just basically a bed and breakfast and a pub, as you and I are used to
Hmm.
many times. And then sometimes I was actually in some larger towns, such as Dursley, was actually a pretty decent sized a town I was in. So you're kind of hiking down through these different, either small towns or into these small areas with bed and breakfasts. It's really, really, really amazing.
Well, let me ask you before we get into some bigger questions. Let me ask you a couple quick fire questions. I
Yeah.
think one of which is best day on the trail.
Definitely, I think the best day on the trail was definitely when I was walking from a town called Wootton under Edge. Okay, and I know I'm mispronouncing that. So if you're listening in the UK, I tried listening when you told me, okay,
Yeah.
and I kept mispronouncing it. And I was actually walking to Old Sodbury, and this was one of my favorite parts of the trail. It was just really just beautiful. A beautiful day as you climbed out. And I lots of water, and you walk past these really majestic farms. And that day just seemed like one after the other.
Hmm.
Bang, 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 until you kind of headed back down into Old Salisbury. But I really enjoyed that day the most. It was also one of the longer days for me on the trail, but it was so beautiful. I didn't even notice it was 14 miles. It
Yeah.
was just, yeah. Next thing you know, I was like, well, I'm like 2 miles from the end.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Right. So that was probably my favorite day. Also, the places, a couple of the bed and breakfasts I stayed were in those types of small towns, and Wootton was kind of a neat little town. It's hard to explain it. Yeah.
Well, second rapid fire question. What was the worst day on the trail?
Well, the worst day of the trail actually happened in cold Ashton. I
Okay.
was supposed to catch a cab back into Bath. So, sometimes you have to go into Bath. They bring you up the next day to finish. It's just the way that there's no lodging in Cold Ashton. And they sent my cab to Cold Aston.
Oh,
It seems that they are not near each other.
oh
Okay.
no.
And so by the time I figured out where my ride was, he was over an hour and a half away and had to come get me because he couldn't take another fare until he cleared the one he was
Oh
in.
my
And he
gosh.
was sitting by the community center in Cold Aston. Okay. And he goes, I'm sitting by the community center. I said, I'm in the middle of nowhere in this
Yeah.
little community center. I said, there's nothing here. You can't possibly be here. And finally we figured out, I sent him a pin. And that was like, it was a long day. I was ridiculously tired. And
Yeah.
I really just wanted to go get some beer, okay, and some food and maybe lay down and get into Bath. And so that's about as bad as it gets. It did not rain once.
That's nice,
I was
especially for the
ready
UK.
for UK
Yeah,
rain,
yeah.
until, nothing. And it was good for me, not great for the farmers, but but there was no bad weather days.
Question number three. Where would you rate this trail? So we've done eight, so you've done close to 10 or 11 trails. This is your
Yeah,
11th.
exactly. Yeah.
So picture a scale of 1 to 11. Where does this fall on difficulty?
Oh, difficulty just because of some of those little sections, maybe let's just put, like around a five, like
Hmm.
fifth difficulty, and only for short periods. It really wasn't difficult. There were some pretty steep ascents out that
Yeah.
were pretty vertical, but not as bad as say Slovenia or even parts of Turkey where we
Hmm.
really, we walked out and looked up and there's Mount Moses.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we're gonna go to the top of it, type of thing. So probably probably difficulty fifth, maybe sixth. It was
And
12. Yeah.
and I think my last rapid fire question before we get into some of the our bigger ones is what trail that we've hiked before, maybe because of scenery, because of how the trail was laid out, is this one most similar to?
For me, it was very similar to Cuthbert's.
Okay.
Okay, but for us, I would say that it was probably, although the topography was different. I'm talking about the general idea behind what we're doing on the trail.
Hmm.
Very close to the Road of Vicentina. Okay,
Okay.
the fact that it was very much town to town, and you're along these very scenic areas that were very very rural.
Hmm.
Remember, and then we come into someplace, a small place. From with regards to like the the geography of the area and things like that, probably closer to like the area between Loch Lomond and before you truly start to climb up into the Highlands of Scotland, West
Some
Highland.
Scottish lowlands kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. You're in that lowlands area,
Hmm.
a few more trees in this area, but so probably a combination if you took the two of them and mashed them together.
Interesting. Well, I do want to take a step back here. There's two things here. This is your third solo hike,
Mhm.
but also like when we first started hiking, this was almost 8 or 9 years ago now.
Uh-huh.
Like, so it's almost a decade of us doing this, which is super cool. But I'm already feeling, it in my bones a little bit now, 30 when I started off at 22 doing this.
Exactly. We couldn't
Um,
catch you at 22. You're gone.
exactly. So I think like, you're a solo hiker in your 60s. What advice would you give for other people who are, so I feel like, the solo hikes you do, you specifically find them as stuff that you feel like you can tackle solo. Like some of the longer ones we
Yes.
do as a group for a reason.
Yep.
Um, and so I think, as someone, if someone's listening to this and they're also like maybe in their late 50s or their 60s and they want to do a solo hike like this, what advice would you give them?
That's a really great question. And I think that really what I would say to them is, first of all, you can do it. Okay. You pick the right trail. Okay. And be methodical on, your planning. Because the one nice thing about traveling with the three of us, especially when we hit some of our technical trails, is I can rely upon you and Eric. And we kind of have this neat team of how we do things. I read the map, you correct me on the map. Eric deals with, the photography, but we're also checking each other. Like, should we have gone that way?
Yeah.
So it really comes down to more of a planning and to plan a route that, to be honest with you, you have access if something goes wrong. You don't want to
Mhm.
have to be airlifted out. And not that anything did, but I was never more than a couple miles from a town,
Yeah.
or and a trail which is fairly well traveled. It wasn't the Great Glen Way where sometimes we didn't see anybody the entire day.
Yeah.
So if something happened to us, we had to rely upon each other. I think the other thing is to prepare yourself for it, to get into, if you haven't done, for anybody, if you haven't done the long hikes, the 10 or 15 miles. And I know there were people on that trail who were doing 20 miles and 25 miles. I don't know how you enjoy yourself trying to
Yeah.
plod through the trail that fast, is to really just kind of build yourself up. And it's a mental game of, if you don't think you can do a 10-mile hike, but you can do a 5-mile hike, it's just 2 5-mile hikes.
Hmm.
You do one in the morning and one in the afternoon. It's just that, but there's it's a mindset. The other thing that I did was I kept a notebook with me, first of all, to record important things that happened on the trail, but also things I had to do that day to plan forward to 2 or 3 days. As you
Hmm.
know, when we're hiking these, sometimes you have to contact for transportation 2 or 3 days in advance to verify meals, right? Order lunches and stuff. And so I planned all that out on Tuesday, call these people and do this. Other than that, really, is to also take things at your own pace. You're not speed hiking this. You're not hiking with, I hiked with it, saw a couple people a couple of times, but a couple of times I really just slowed myself down. I'm like, I don't have to be anywhere till 5 o'clock today.
Yeah.
Right. And that means literally I can hike this at 1 mile an hour, which is
Hmm.
which is hard, which is usually reserved for a hard trail. So if I hike it at 2 miles an hour, I would stop, take a decent break,
Yeah.
with beautiful views, and just sit there and talk to a few people walking by, and then just
Hmm.
get up and do another 3 miles. And you can do it. It's just a little bit harder. And you got to plan it in advance.
Hmm.
Plan what each day is going to be.
Well, kind of you were talking about like meeting people on the trail. Always I think like there's always two kind of sides to the trail. There's the actual nature of the trail itself, and there's also like the people you meet along the way.
Yeah.
So, did we meet any characters on this trail?
I met characters. Okay.
Okay.
But here's the thing. They were inspirational characters. I met a number of different people. Okay. From various areas, a number of Americans.
Hmm.
Okay. There were met some Canadians too. Every once in a while we came across, there was a series of guys who were there from Norway, which I crossed back and forth. But the funny thing was there were three groups that I kept crossing back and forth with who were older than me, okay,
Hmm.
probably in their 70s, okay. And I don't know how, but every time I turned around, they were ahead of me, okay. And they were not speed hikers, but they were just, like I said, they were taking their time, and being able to sit with them and talk with them about some of the trails are great. One of the things I really enjoyed about some of the people was, this is why I like staying in the Airbnbs, right, and the small bed and breakfast,
Hmm.
because you go down the common area, there's other hikers there.
Yeah.
And so I kept running into this woman named Sarah from New Hampshire, and she's also done a lot of solo hikes and group hikes and things along the line. So that was, just talk to them about some of the trails we've done together.
Hmm.
So one of the guys I met, a couple, Sam and Kyle, they were hiking, and come to find out the last day, I find out that uh, uh, Sam is a hiker, okay, and
Hmm.
Kyle's his wife, right?
Hmm.
And they're really cool people. He's not just a hiker; he's a painter.
Hmm.
Right? I said, "Oh, a friend of mine's a painter." We talked for a moment, and he started showing me his painters. No, this guy's a painter.
Yeah.
Like, he could paint what's behind you, and
Yeah.
it would look like that,
Yeah.
And it was just amazing to meet him and exposure. And then another couple I met, they were from Maine, pretty close to places we've hiked in Maine,
Hmm.
near Bar Harbor and Acadia, and they were hiking. This is going to be their last, probably long distance hike they were going to take. Because they're
Really.
a little bit older, right?
Yeah.
And they were getting ready to go spend a couple more weeks in England. They were taking the Queen Mary back across
No, that's
the
cool.
South out in New Hampshire, right? So
Yeah.
it just, the stories of meeting some of these people. Met some really cool local people.
Hmm.
Lots of mostly farmers who are just out in their land as they're walking through. It's public trails in England. You know how it works.
Yeah.
Basically have a right of way to go through their property as long as you don't destroy things.
Yep.
And then most of the time they would come out, they see me, they'd stop and get off and come talk to me for a few moments and
Yeah.
chat, and just amazing stories of the land. I'm
Hmm.
trying to write this stuff down and get these people's names and everything, and it's just so those are the characters were really the other hikers, and mostly they were inspirational. They were just really great people to interact with. I enjoyed seeing them on the trail, not, dreading, oh gosh, how am I going to slow down enough so I don't, run into these people or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you talk about there's a lot of Americans on the trail, a lot of
Yeah.
Canadians. We've been hiking now again for 8 or 9 years now, um, across, let's say, three administrations and two presidents.
Yeah.
And we won't get political on this show, but there is some questions about how Americans are perceived overseas,
Yeah.
especially with some tensions that are happening diplomatically, let's put it that way, between
Right.
European countries and the United States right now. And so I think sometimes people think that like if they go overseas to the UK or to France or Germany, that there's going to be some pushback for being American. So I want to hear your perspectives of how that was in the UK this time.
You know, Devin, it pretty much paralleled what you and I have seen now for 8 years, that we've been, in Turkey or Turkey, right?
Hmm.
And a very different culture, and just been openly welcomed as being hikers, and we've been in Portugal, and obviously, all over England. And I have a funny story about this just to kind of show it. I had stopped, and I was talking to this one guy in the field, and he stopped me. He goes, "Are you American or Canadian?" And I said, "Well, I really like to say Canadian." Right? He just laughed. He goes, "Well, the problem with you Yanks are," and I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, you can go ahead and say it." He goes, "You always got to one up us, don't you?" He goes, "No." He goes, "We have this really bad government right now, but no, you've got to be more." So it was just like this laughing moment. It's just very,
Yeah.
very much. And then we switched. We quickly just dropped it and talked about the trail.
Yeah.
Nobody even brought anything up. You know, the farmers didn't care or didn't bring it up, and I
Yeah.
didn't, say anything about it. And so I think that the people respect the fact that you're there to see their country.
Hmm.
It's the people were there. We're there and to see their country and experience their country. And of course, a lot of these things are tourist-based
Yeah.
areas, right? So they're glad to see us in. But there was a large number of Americans, and it was just wasn't a big deal. It just was everything was really relaxed and very respectful, but just friendly.
Yeah.
It was just saying, "Welcome to my home," and what can I help you with? And
Hmm.
nobody asked, like, what did you do, or how did what's going on with this? It just never really came up. I can't remember anybody bring up a certain thing like why did your government do this?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not in the government.
Yeah.
I'm a hiker. So they're very friendly, but the same thing you and I've seen every single place we've been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the things I've also realized from doing some traveling and how I feel like when you're doing these hikes, you're off the main tourist paths a lot, and so you're kind of sometimes people in these places. I'm thinking about Portugal. I'm thinking about Turkey. The only time they meet Americans sometimes is the hikers,
Yeah.
and that's a really unique opportunity because one, you can be kind of representative of your country, but the other side is that the people who have the preconceived notions maybe of like the big tourist crowds or like that kind
Yeah.
of stuff,
Yeah.
there's a lot more opportunity for people to meet you one-on-one when you're on the trail because they know you're here to go see their country and to see it
Yeah.
in a slow way and be respectful of it. And I think that's always been like one of my favorite parts of the trail is that people are just really willing to meet you where you are on the trail.
I was walking one day through this beautiful wooded area, once again, not too far outside of Dursley, and there was this older lady walking her dog, and I'm not still amazed. I'm like, "How did you get your dog up here?"
Yeah.
I just struggled to get up here, but and actually must have lived in the area, and I was walking along the trail, and she just stopped me and was just chatting for a minute. She goes, "Here's what you want to do." She goes, "This next mile is pretty boring, and
Hmm.
just walk over here and like walk down this road over here. You got
Hmm.
some beautiful views off to the east, that we've
Yeah.
been looking." And it was just really sweet of her to take her time and just tell me, there's a different way to do this,
Yeah.
and come see it. And of course, if you're in the bigger cities, in Bath, I mean, being a solo hiker and things, I stayed out of, big bars or things like
Yeah.
that. I just, we just go to the pub and I'd have something to eat and drink and
Hmm.
head home and back to the room. So That's part of traveling by yourself as well. Don't put yourself in situations, but I never saw one.
Yeah.
And again, I've never all these I don't remember a single time that we've had you know, somebody's been upset with us because we're where we came from.
Yeah. Well, I mean, kind of switching gears a little bit. Where, you're still doing solo hikes and you're going to continue doing solo hikes.
Yep.
Are you going to keep doing them in the UK, you think? Or are you thinking somewhere else?
So there's a couple in the UK I'd like to do. First of all, I think I'd like to go back and finish the north part of this trail.
Hmm.
The area between Chipping Camden, okay, and Painswick is supposed to be really one of the most beautiful parts of the trail, which amazes me because the part I was in was simply gorgeous, right?
Yeah.
So that would actually turn it back. If you did the entire thing again, it would drive it back to probably being a 10-day hike.
Hmm.
I just didn't have the time for it this time. And so, and I still have this idea, although it'll never happen once, of doing the coast to coast. It is supposed to be challenging. Some of the areas are supposed to be rough to get through, but I'd have to do it over 2 seasons. But to be honest with you, one of the things I've really thought very strongly about is I'd like to go back to Ireland. And the reason why I picked those countries is relatively easy to get there.
Hmm.
The language is not an issue,
Yeah.
right? I know the transportation systems, but also maybe going back and looking at some of the trails that I just like the Dingle Way, which I didn't finish because of
Yeah.
my knees, and just saying, okay, I'm not sure I'd solo it or maybe just do portions of it, maybe half of the Dingle Way. But also, I think I'm going to start looking maybe into Italy. Some of the trails into Italy,
Yeah.
the coast, will be great. I still have this idea of maybe even going to Newfoundland and doing it. There's a couple of trails up in that area. It'd be fun to hike. I lived in Iceland for a little bit, so going to Iceland would just be, great. Although the hiking is, you and I have talked about this, it's very different, right? So
Yeah.
it's more of a car hike than a true like. So I think I'm going to keep doing it. I don't know what I'm going to do for next year, but I got to think about it. We have a wee hike ahead of us before
A
this.
little bit. Do we want to tell people what we're doing?
Sure, go ahead and let them know.
Yeah, so we're doing the King Ludwig Way. And this is in Bavaria, Germany. So this is going to be another good 7 to 8 day hike.
Yep.
Um, and we were between a couple of trails this time. Sometimes when we're looking at the trails, we kind of have like a firm idea of what we're going to do next. And I think after, going back to Scotland, I think we were kind of milling around for a couple options. And we realized one, we hadn't really done Germany before.
Right.
And we were between a couple. There was like a trail that was like more along the Rhine River.
Mhm.
There was one that was more up in like the proper Alps of Bavaria.
Mhm.
And so we kind of like took like a middle ground between those two. And this one is following some ancient castle towns along the edge of the Alps, at the edge of the Bavarian Alps.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be fully hiking the mountains themselves. We've done our mountain trails. We've done Mont Blanc. We've done Slovenia. We know what the Alps are like. We've hiked the Alps before.
Yeah.
So this is going to
We'll go back, but
yeah.
Not this one.
These are going to be more the foothills of the Alps. But I think for us, it's going to be really interesting because we're going to be in Bavaria. We're going to be in Germany. We've never done Germany before. Yeah, it's going to be a really good hike. So that will be this September coming up. And so that's our next big hike. But I think we're going to get a few more podcasts between now and then. So please keep an eye out. And, the one that I want to be doing, and if I can get on one of your solo hikes, I will, and make it a duo hike, is I've been really thinking about like the Mount Snowdon area in Wales. I heard that was really pretty.
So this came up several times. That's an absolute hike. And these are mostly solo hikes because I just have the ability to do that. Being an author, I can decide where I'm going to go do things. And April's a great time for me to do things. And it's not it's not very busy yet in the UK.
Yeah.
But that area is supposed to be absolutely gorgeous to do.
Yeah.
There's also a trail in Ireland up by where you used to be.
Yeah. There's a couple up there.
Yeah, a couple that connects the very northern coast of Ireland, which I didn't know there were longer trails up there, but there's some new or pieced together like 60, 70 milers up there in that area too, near King's. What was the one with the King's Landing?
No, that's Game of Thrones. They did film a lot of Game of Thrones there. I think I hiked part of this one way back when I used to live in Northern Ireland. There's something called, I think, I want to say it's the Giant's Causeway hike. It's not the Giant's Causeway itself, but it follows the north coast of Northern Ireland, which is one of the most beautiful places I've ever lived. Behind me on my thing, that's actually Dingle Way.
Yep.
But if you believe it, actually, I think Northern Ireland is prettier, at least the northern coast, than this.
Yeah.
So
That would be another fun one to do as well. Uh, yeah, this one was worth it. It would be worth going back and hiking the northern part, and then even following it down, down south past Dursley, uh, past Stroud, and coming into some of those lower areas. You don't have to go all the way to Bath, although Bath was a great place to end a hike.
yeah.
What a gorgeous city. So old. Everything it's just very old, and just every time you turn around, you're coming across cemeteries of, from the 14 and 1500s.
I mean, it goes all back to way to the Roman times. That's where the name comes from.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, they still have the baths, although they're very commercialized now. But
yeah. Well, I think that's us for today. So, once again, I'm Devin Windlespect.
and I'm Mike Whittlesbeck.
And this is a Long Ways podcast. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.